Okay, I think we're live. Are we live? All right. Welcome, everybody. I'm really excited to be doing this. I'm glad you decided to join me. I am going to stall for a second, just for two reasons. One, I want to give people a chance to jump on and get here. The other thing is that there's a little quirk to the way this technology works that I've been kind of makes my mind explode a little bit. So once I start talking, it takes like a minute or something before it actually gets to you. And they do that so that there's a little bit of a buffer in case someone has a slow connection or something. It just helps mitigate buffering time. But the weird part of it is that I'm in your future or you're in my future. It gets a little bit confusing if you try and think about it. But so I want to make sure people have a chance to get on, but also I want to make sure this is actually working. And I'm looking at another computer here and it just came through. Okay, good. So we are live. Very exciting. Welcome. So a couple things just to get started. One, you may not know this about me, but I am actually house sitting in Mexico, which is very fun. I am house sitting 2 dogs and 8 cats and a pond full of fish and have a nice swimming pool right on the other side of this computer, actually. So it's very nice. You don't have to cry for me. However, being in Mexico does present certain challenges. So just so you know, like I said, there are 2 dogs here. You might hear a bark. It might happen. You also might notice I'm broadcasting from the kitchen. The way the houses are set up here is very open. Like I think you can see all the way back there through most of the house in that direction. It's just everything's very open. There are windows that they don't close. They're just not able to close. So things tend to be a little noisy. You're probably gonna hear some birds. The birds here are the microphones love picking up the bird sound, but there is a rooster in the neighborhood that sometimes goes crazy. You might hear that. Cat might jump on the counter behind me, who knows? So those are just some of the potential excitements we have to come. Also, and hopefully this will not happen, but while we've been here, we have had a couple of power outages where the power just goes out and there's not really much you can do about that. I did a run through today and everything went through fine. If I do lose power here, I do have a neighbor that I can try and maybe get back on, but just know if everything goes black and I die, or the connection dies, not me, of course, hopefully, I will do what I can to get back on as quickly as possible. Just some of those things you can't control. So it is what it is. We're just here to have fun and take it as it comes. All right, so a little bit about me, in case you don't know me. My name is Robb Hillman. I am a registered nurse and a certified life coach. And I work mainly with nurses who are kind of tired of the overwhelm and the frustration and the self-doubt and kind of that pathway that we see so clearly that leads right to burnout, that leads right to us having to be a martyr in order to take care of our patients the way we want to. And I am of the opinion that that is not necessary, that a lot of people do that. We're kind of taught to do that in some ways, but I don't think we have to. I think there are better ways, there are better strategies to have the life and the career that we want to have. And I think it's available to us. And so that's mainly what I talk about. And what we're going to talk about here tonight is strategy. And that's kind of how I see what I do. It's just like finding those strategies that are going to give us better results. So right now, the things you're doing in your life really are strategies, whether you have thought about it consciously or whether it's just kind of habits that you've picked up. It is a strategy. And if they are working for you, then great. I don't want to imply that everything I teach you tonight is about the truth and you have to do it my way. I never tell my clients what they're supposed to do because I don't know that. You know what you should do, right? You know your life, you know your circumstances. So if the strategies you are currently using are working, then terrific. There's nothing wrong with doing it differently than what I'm going to suggest. However, I sort of assume that if you are here on this call, that there are areas where those strategies aren't working, and that you are looking for a strategy that is going to be a little more robust, be a little more focused, have fewer side effects, something along those lines. So I'm really excited about what we're going to talk about tonight. This is stuff that has certainly changed my life and changed my career for the better. And so I'm excited about it. So you'll get a chance here to hear what I have to say. And then, it's kind of up to you to be able to take the pieces that you think are going to help you the best, and in what ways they're going to help you the best. So very exciting. Let's see. So just little like housekeeping stuff. So I think I'm going to do this wrong. So on my computer, it's on this side, but I bet I'm reversed. So I bet it's on this side. There is a chat box. Feel free to use that if you want to ask questions or ask for clarifications. So we've got the content here. It's going to take about an hour to go through the content. And then there'll be some time at the end for you to ask questions if you, like I said, need clarification or to have questions. The other thing you can do, because we're going to be talking about boundaries, if you have a boundary that you would like to get some feedback on, you can just type the boundary right in there. Like I said, we're going to go through it tonight exactly how to write the boundary in what I think is a really powerful way. Write it in there. I can give you some feedback. And that's kind of why I'm doing this live, just to give us that opportunity. Now, of course, it's very possible that I am such an excellent teacher that none of you will have any questions. I'm totally prepared for that, I'm just going to be so awesome that all of your answers will be, or all of your questions will be answered ahead of time. So that's fine. Then we get out a little bit early, nothing wrong with that. But if you do have questions, this is your chance. So I encourage you to take it. Now remember, like I said, there is a delay. So when I tell you, hey, what's your question? It's going to take a while for that message to get to you, and then you have to type in your question, and then it has to get to me. So don't be that person who waits to the very last second to type in your question, because if that happens, I might not get it. If I get a bunch of questions after we're finished, maybe I'll do a newsletter or something and try to answer them. But I encourage you, nurses are brave, right? We are brave people. So write your question in early, and then I'll be able to get to it on the broadcast. Anything else? So like I said, it'll be about an hour to go through the content. We'll have questions, and then at the very end, I'll give you some information of what it might look like to work with me a little bit further and do some more kind of specific individual work. So that'll be at the very end. All right, so I think we are good. I'm just checking out my stuff here. I'm going to get started then with the presentation. Okay, sound good? I hope so. So give me a second here. I have to click on screen share. We want to do entire screen share. And then I'm going to go here and click present. Is it working? I think it's working. Excellent. So this is our presentation for tonight. Superhero training for nurses, how to set boundaries. All right, so what is superhero training and why is it important? So I guess, I have to say, you've probably heard the saying, if you save one life, you are a hero, and if you save 100 lives, then you are a nurse. I very much believe, I know people kind of say it like a joke sometimes, but I believe it. I think nurses are superheroes, and I'm kind of a nerd and like to have fun with things, so that's kind of why I call it superhero training. But why is it important to set? Why do we do this work? What's my goal of giving you these strategies? And it is all to set you up for the best possible outcome. That's always my goal, is to present the strategies for you so you can get what you want in the best or the easiest kind of way. So that's what we're doing. So our content tonight, we've got 3 parts. Part 1, who is responsible for what? This is what I kind of call boundaries with ourselves. It's just sort of figuring out where we are. Part 2, the importance of being clear. This is kind of like figuring out our boundaries with other people. And then part 3 is actually the practical part of how we are actually going to set the boundaries. It's an actual tool that we're going to use, okay? All right, and then just before we get started, one last thing. I just want you to think about the people in your life who you think are making you crazy, okay? Because I can talk about theory. I mean, believe me, I can talk about theory. I love this stuff, right? But what's really gonna help you best is if you can make it specific to you and your circumstances. So think about the people at work, about people at home, about your boss and your coworkers and your friends and your partners and whoever it is. Think about the people in your life that are making you crazy, because those are probably the people that you have either no boundaries with or weak boundaries with. Okay, and so as we talk to this thing, it's going to be much more helpful for you to have them in mind and see how this might be able to help you, or how you might be able to apply it in your life. Okay, so part one, boundaries with ourselves. So I guess the first place that we want to start is like, how do you know if you have a boundary that can be strengthened? So I've got some suggestions here. Okay, some questions I want to ask you. See if any of these apply to you. So do you ever feel taken advantage of? Okay, do you ever feel like other people use your emotions for their own gain? Like they get on the phone with you and they complain about their day, and at the end of the call, they feel terrific and now you feel terrible. Or you just feel like people take advantage of you and kind of manipulate you into doing things you don't want to do. Okay? Do you ever feel, this is a big one for nurses, do you ever feel like you have to save people and fix their problems? That it's your job to make their lives better? And this could be friends, this could be coworkers, definitely can be patients, family, anybody. But where you feel like it's somehow your responsibility to give them a different outcome. Do you ever feel like your relationships are either completely amazing and then something happens and they're totally awful and there's kind of no in between and it just kind of goes back and forth between amazing and awful? Do you ever feel like you get sucked into fighting and debating and the drama? You tell people you hate drama, but then you're always somehow in the middle of it. Now, I'll be honest, the place where I get into trouble with this is the Facebook. And don't get me wrong, I love the Facebook. You could probably say I'm addicted to it. However, one of the things that I have definitely noticed with myself is that somebody in my feed will say something political, or more often, what's been getting me lately is, you know, this kind of arguments about vaccinations and whether that's a good idea or not is sort of a trigger for me. But it's usually something like that, and somebody posts something, and then it's usually not even the person who originally posted it. It's not my friend. It's somebody they know. It's a relative or a friend of theirs gets on and says something that is completely 100% wrong. And then I feel like I have to get in there and, you know, tell them the truth and point out their mistake. And then all of a sudden it's this, like, you know, going on for hours and these huge posts. And I'm in this fight with a complete stranger. And at the end of it, I'm like mad, I'm frustrated, I've gotten no good out of it, right? I certainly haven't talked them into believing my argument. I've just kind of yelled at them, and they've just sort of yelled at me back, so I certainly have no insight into what they're saying. So it really serves no purpose whatsoever other than to make people angry, right? All of these things are boundary issues, okay? So these are all examples of just weak kind of boundaries where we're not taking responsibility for ourselves. Here, I actually have a couple more. Or no, I don't. Here we are. So this is my favorite slide, slide number 10. This is my favorite slide on the whole thing. So having healthy boundaries means you are taking responsibility for your own thoughts, feelings, and actions, and are not taking responsibility for the thoughts, feelings, and or actions of others. I hope you guys have a pen, and I hope you will write this down, because this is, for me, this was like the life-changing moment when I understood this concept, okay? Having healthy boundaries means you are taking responsibility for your own thoughts, feelings, and actions, and are not taking responsibility for the thoughts, feelings, and actions of others. This is like so awesome when we start to think about this, okay? And that's what I want to teach you tonight. This is like strategy numero uno right here, okay? This is about you picking a strategy that puts you in control of things you can actually control and not resting your thoughts, feelings, and emotions on the actions of what other people do, because we can't control other people. We can never control other people. And so if your happiness is reliant on somebody else, you're just setting yourself up for a poor outcome. But if you can learn how to take responsibility for your own thoughts and feelings, I'm telling you, it opens up a whole new world. So another way of looking at the first half of this is that having healthy boundaries means you are not delegating responsibility for your thoughts, feelings, and actions to other people. I really believe that a lot of us do this, and we don't think about it, right? In fact, we are taught as children to do that. How many times did your parents say, don't hurt your sister's feelings? Don't do that, you're gonna make your father mad. It's just in our language, it's a quirk of our language that we are taught to take responsibility for other people and to then delegate responsibility for us to other people. But that is not the most powerful way you can live. And like I said, again, this is a strategy. So if you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but what I would offer to you is that this is going to be a very powerful place from which to build the rest of your life on this foundation of you being in control of yourself and not having to rely on other people to give you the things that you need. Okay? I could talk about this a long time because I get really excited about it, but this is very true. Think about it. You want to take responsibility for yourself, to put yourself in control. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is walk through some more, I put in healthy boundaries, maybe weak boundaries would be good too. These are some things that you may have thought in your life and see how these are going for you. So I'm always running behind because my coworkers are idiots and I have to tell them how to do their jobs. I can't delegate tasks or take a break because no one can take care of my patients as well as I can. You can't go out to dinner without me. You know how jealous I get about that. Oh my gosh, I would so love to be a travel nurse, but my mom would never forgive me for moving away. Have you thought any of these? Okay, here's some good ones for nurses. Okay, oh, I don't want to pick up an extra shift, but if I don't, everyone's going to be mad at me. They're going to blame me. The unit's going to have a lot of problems, and it's going to be all my fault if I don't pick up an extra shift, even though I don't want to and really shouldn't. I know you guys have said this one. I am so frustrated that my patient is not listening to what I am trying to tell him. And I know, that you've all done this because I have done it myself. I am angry because I know that as soon as my patient is discharged, she is not going to take care of herself or change any of her behavior. What is the point of her even coming into the hospital? Okay, guys, so in all of these scenarios, this is all where someone is either taking responsibility for thoughts, feelings, and actions that aren't theirs, or they are demanding that someone else take responsibility for theirs. Can you see how in all of these situations, you are relying on the action of someone else to make you happy? I would like to offer you that you should be able to make yourself happy, or you can at least be in control of that, right? We don't want to rely on other people for our basic kind of feelings, okay? Sometimes I get a little pushback on the extra shift one. People are like, wait, shouldn't I help people? Shouldn't I want to, help the people around me? And I want to be clear about this too, okay? So I kind of think about helping people the same way I think about loaning people money, okay? If you listen to like Susie Orman, she's gonna give you this advice, that if you loan someone money, make sure it is money that you can afford to lose, right? That you're not giving your rent money to somebody to pay their phone bill. And then when they can't pay you back in time to pay your rent, now you're hurting and you're frustrated and you're not taken care of, right? We don't want to do that. But if we have the money, then it's fine to loan someone money if we want to. But we want to, the best way to think about it, again, this is only strategy, but the best way to think about it is that it's a gift. Is that I'm giving this person this money and I know it's going to help them and it's a gift. Now, I might not tell the other person that it is a gift. I might still ask them to pay me back. And then if they do, great, like win-win, right? I was able to help them. They were able to pay me back, perfect. But if they're not able to pay me back for whatever reason, I'm not panicked. I'm not frustrated. I don't have to be mad at them. I don't have to, sour the whole relationship. Because when I first gave it to them, in my head, it was a gift. And I think when you help people like this, you should think about it the same way. If you've got the day off and there's really nothing you have to do and you get asked to pick up an extra shift and you're like, well, I don't really want to, but I do want to help the unit and it's my turn and whatever. And if that's your motivation, then great, help. But if you're like, I'm supposed to go to my kid's soccer game and I really don't want to go, and I really don't want to take this shift, but I'm so afraid, I'm putting my work people ahead of me, and I'm feeling like I'm responsible for the outcome. I'm the only one that can solve the problem, right? Because that's usually not true. We like to think we're pretty awesome, and in most cases we are pretty awesome, but we're probably not the only person who can solve that problem, okay? So if you want to help people, great, help them, but do it in a way that doesn't hurt yourself, right? You got to keep yourself strong so that you continue to help other people. Pretty much everything I do, guys, is under the umbrella of self-care. I want you to take care of yourself so that you come from a strong position and can continue to help other people rather than getting burnt out and losing the ability then to help people in the future because you get burnt out, quit, right? We want to think long-term, okay? So that's what we're doing. Okay, so little check-in here. I want you to think about the person or persons that you were considering, in the beginning, in your real life. How does this kind of perspective, does that shift what you were thinking about them? Is this a person that maybe you're taking responsibility for their feelings or you're delegating responsibility for your feelings to them? Is there something that you could shift in that way to make that relationship better and stronger by giving yourself, the better boundaries? Okay, just want to check in. Maybe this information has got you thinking about other people. That's great. Maybe if you've got a piece of paper, start writing these people down so you can remember, because this is going to be helpful. Okay, so part 2, boundaries with others. So the question is, what is a boundary and who is it for? And the reason I ask this very basic question is because boundaries are typically very misunderstood, okay? Most people think a boundary is something that we create to control someone else, right? We think, okay, my boundary is that you can't do this anymore. My boundary is that you have to start doing this. And I'm going to put up these walls and keep you out. And, okay, that is not how I'm going to define a boundary tonight, okay? Boundaries are something we create for ourselves to take care of and protect ourselves, okay? It's all about you are creating this for you to take care of yourself, okay? We do not create them for other people. We set them for ourselves, and then we share them with other people so that we can maintain healthy and even intimate relationships with other people, right? Because we're telling them what we really want rather than just like, I hate that person, so I'm going to stay away from them and avoid them, right? We're going to tell them what we need to have a good relationship, and then we're going to take care of ourselves, okay? Part of the problem is that when we have vague boundaries, you're going to find yourself getting frustrated at other people for crossing your boundaries. But the problem is that other person probably has no idea why you're mad at them, because they don't know that they've crossed a boundary, right? It is human nature. We sort of assume that when we think something, that's like the normal way, and of course everyone should just think the same way we do. So if we know it's a boundary, of course they should know, and we expect them to kind of read our mind and know what we want, okay? And that is a strategy you can try. But what I would like to offer you, again, is that it's going to be much more powerful if instead of just expecting them to figure it out, you just tell them, right? We take control, we say, look, this is my boundary. And then they know what it is because you told them, okay? Of course, before you could tell them, you have to get clear about it yourself, okay? Boundaries can totally save relationships when it's just about communication and letting them know what's going on. And then we can have good feelings for that person. We can love them, we can respect them, we can whatever we want with them, you know, as a friend, as a colleague, as whatever, regardless of what their actual behavior is, right? Because their behavior does not make us feel a certain way, because we're gonna take care of ourselves and we're gonna feel the way we wanna feel, right? You're the one that's in control. You are not reliant on them and their behavior. Okay, so kind of the example. So a physical boundary is very easy to understand, right? You have a house, you have a yard, and then you have a fence around the house. And everyone kind of knows the fence is the boundary. So if someone walks down the street and they hop over your fence and they start digging a hole in your yard or something, you can yell at the front door, hey you've crossed my boundary, get out of my lawn, you know, get off my lawn, or I'm gonna call the police, right? It's a very standard kind of boundary that's easy for people to understand. Now, emotional boundaries, we don't have a literal fence. We talk about putting up walls, but they're not there, right? They're imaginary. So we need to verbalize them if you want people to know where the fence is, okay? I know when I say this, you're like, well, duh, that totally makes sense. But a lot of times people don't think about this and we don't realize how simple some of this stuff can be. Okay, a boundary means you are very clear about what you will tolerate in your life, what you will expose yourself to, okay? And so once you create those clear boundaries, then you can communicate them to other people when necessary. So I'm gonna give you an example. This wasn't a client of mine, this was a client of one of my coaches actually. It was a young mother, she had 2 little kids, and her mother-in-law lived in the same city and would come over and help out with the kids. And she liked this, they had a great relationship, the kids loved grandma to come over, you know, it was great. But as time went on, she found herself getting frustrated and angry and resentful toward the mother-in-law for coming over. And it took her a while to figure it out, working with this coach, that the problem was that the mother-in-law would just come over whenever. She never called and said, oh, I'm gonna come over. She would just show up. She'd be out shopping and then she'd show up. So sometimes it was great and they'd come in and everything would be fine. And other times, like she was trying to get the kids to eat the end of their lunch, or she was trying to get them down for a nap and suddenly grandma's there and it kind of ruined her plans. So she had to get very specific about what her boundary was. And then she had to take the kind of scary step of talking to the mother-in-law and being like, look, I love it when you come over, but I need you to call first. And if you call first, then I can let you know if it's a good time, if it's not a good time, you know, and she was able to set that boundary in a way, because the mother-in-law had no idea. She could probably, I mean, I never talked to them, so I don't know, but she probably could feel that anger and resentment building, but she didn't know why. Because in her mind, right, she's coming to help out. She's coming over to see what she can do, how she can help, right? She was completely oblivious to the fact that there was a problem. It just takes good communication, okay? All right, this is very important. A boundary is not an ultimatum, okay? I kind of said this before, but I want to say it very clearly. This is not where you tell someone, stop asking me to pick up your shifts because I'm not picking them anymore. And then they come and ask you again and you're like, I told you to stop asking me, I'm not picking up your shifts. And you get angry and they get defensive and now you're like hating on this person, right? That is a weak, boundary, okay? What you want to say is just say that, hey, Just so you know, this summer, my kids are off of school and I'm going to spend as much time with them as possible, so I can't pick up any shifts this summer. You're free to ask me if you want, because I know, sometimes you got problems, you got to ask people, so you can ask me if you want, but just so you know, I'm going to say no. Can you see the difference in those two things? Where one, you're putting them in control and you're saying, your behavior is going to dictate my emotions. If you do this, I'm going to feel this way. And if you do this, I'm going to feel this way, right? They're in control and you are the victim. Okay, victim is a word that I know sometimes comes with some connotations, but listen to the way I'm using it in a very specific kind of way, okay? In the sense that I want you to be in control of that situation. I do not want you to be reliant on someone else's behavior of how you are then going to feel or act. To me, that is a victim, okay? So instead, if you just say, you can do whatever you want, you can ask me, I don't care, but I'm going to say no. Right? And then it doesn't matter what they do. You are taking care of yourself and you are fine. You get to feel however you want. It doesn't mean you have to like that person. It doesn't mean you have to be their friend if you don't want to be, but it gives you're in control and you get to decide rather than being the victim of them, okay? Boundaries are not a way to control someone else to make us feel better, okay? Kind of the way I look at this is, when we were talking about the house before, if someone crosses your fence and comes into your house, you get to set up a boundary, right? And take care of yourself. You do not, however, want to walk across the street, cross their fence and go into their house and then try and tell them what they're supposed to do. Because then you're the one breaking the boundary. Then at that point, they could be like, hey, you don't get to talk to me like that. And if you do, I'm not going to talk to you anymore, or whatever. They get to set the boundary. So don't go into their house, right? You want to stay in your house and protect yourself when you need to. Okay, so just check in again. Think about those people. How is that kind of affecting, or what we're going to get into next is actually setting up the boundary, the tool that we use to do that. But I want you to just kind of think, how is this, how can you apply this to your life? Okay, and I guess one of the things I want to, elaborate on is when you think about, okay, I call him that guy, right? All of us work with that guy. He's the one that sits in the corner and doesn't work very hard and kisses up to management, so they like him, but then he kind of bullies everyone else on the unit, and he's terrible, and he's horrible, and he's rude, and he's disrespectful, and he's like, the most horrible person in the world, and of course you have to work with him. Okay? We always think that that's us. Of course, everyone on this call knows exactly who I'm talking about, because this guy works at every workplace, right? Every job I have ever had, that guy was at. He had a different face. Sometimes he was a girl, right? It's a different person, but it's always that guy. Okay? And what we very, I think, unaware, what we do is we will walk into the workplace and we kind of scan the room and see who's there. And we see him sitting in the corner, and we see our friends, and we see people we like, but we zero in on him, and we go, you know what, you're the person I'm going to put in charge of my feelings today. And if you behave great, which I know you won't do, then I'm going to feel good. And if you behave like normal, like your terrible self, then I'm going to feel terrible, right? We pick the worst person in the room to be responsible for our feelings. Why do we do this? I don't know. I don't know the answer. I know that we do this. I know I have done it, right? So what I'm trying to teach you is to not do that. Do not pick the person who's completely incapable of giving you what you want to be responsible for your happiness about getting it or not. Okay. So we're going to move on. Part 3, how to set a boundary. Okay. So there are 2 parts to the boundary. You'll see them here. There is the request and there is the consequence. Now, I want to be very, very clear. I'm going to spend a little bit of time here defining these 2 parts because people like to misinterpret them sometimes. Okay, so the request is exactly that. It is a request. It is not a demand. It's not an ultimatum. It's not a, you can't disrespect me anymore. It's not a, you have to stop doing this. It is a request for them to honor whatever boundary you set. Okay, and then the second part is the consequence. This is also, people get confused about this. So the consequence is not a punishment. It is not even, the consequence is not for the person you're giving the boundary to. The consequence is for you. And you're like, what? What are you talking about? I'm not going to punish myself. The consequence, but remember, is not a punishment. The consequence is the behavior you are going to take care of yourself if your request is not met. Okay, I'm going to give you a whole bunch of examples of this, so this is going to make more sense, I promise. But I just want to be really clear about this, right? We want to set this up so that you are the person who stays in control. Okay? So think of the request. Well, I guess when we put it out, usually we'll say the request as an if statement. Okay? So the way it usually works is, if you do this, then I am going to do this. Very simple. Okay? If you raise your voice to me, I'm going to walk away. If you continue to raise your voice to me, I am going to go to a manager, or I'm going to call HR. If you berate me on the telephone, I am going to hang up. If you come over and start gossiping, I am not going to be interested in listening, and I'm going to walk away. If you come over and you're ranting about a coworker or even a patient that you have that you're not liking, and you're just ranting and making me feel bad, I'm not going to want to listen to that, and I'm going to ask you to stop. Okay, here's one for maybe like a personal relationship. Like if you have a partner who is gambling or spending too much money that you're not in agreement with, you can say, you know, if you continue to spend this money, I'm going to open up a separate bank account for my earnings that you won't have access to. Do you see how these requests there's no requirement, there's no demand that the person has to do that, but you're just saying, if you do it, this is how I'm going to take care of myself. You are not the victim. You are not then, you know, on tenterhooks waiting to see if they're going to do it or not, because you don't care. They can do whatever they want. Let me give you a big clue, you guys. People can do whatever they want. Now, we like to think we can control people. We try to manipulate, we get ultimatums. Like, we want to think we can control people, but you really can't. That kind of stuff sometimes will work, but it's not 100%. Ultimately, they're going to do what they want to do. And if you are hanging your hat on them doing something specific, you're just setting yourself up for a poor outcome. So instead, we want to be the ones in charge. We want to take care of ourselves. If you do this, then this is what I'm going to do to take care of myself. You don't even have to be angry. You're just taking care of yourself. This was a woman I talked to who her parents were divorced, and she would have her dad come over for dinner, and he would just like complain and complain and complain about the mom, about how horrible she was to him. And his daughter didn't want to hear it. And finally she said, Dad, if you keep complaining about mom, I'm going to walk away. She didn't say, Dad, you have to stop talking about mom. You can't do this anymore. She just said, if you're going to do that, then I'm going to walk away. He gets to do whatever he wants, but so do you. Okay? Now I'm going to give you one that's like really kind of like high level boundary. I love this one. If you yell at me, then I'm not going to take it personally. Doesn't that kind of blow your mind? I love this one. So this one is like taking such good care of yourself, right? I use this one, right? And when someone comes and they start yelling at me for something unfounded or that I like don't agree with or whatever, I am under no obligation to believe a word they say, right? I know everything that they say has everything to do with them and what they believe and what they think, and it has nothing to do with me. I can listen to it, and if there's something in there that I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's a good point. I can take it if I want, but I'm under no obligation to take any of it, right? People's behavior is about them. It is not about you. And a lot of times people are like, oh, but I have to protect myself. I have to, I don't want to get taken advantage of and walked all over. I have to defend myself. But by doing that, you've already made yourself the victim because now you are responding to their behavior. And like I said, this is strategy, take it or leave it. But I think it is a much more powerful place if you say, you can do whatever you want, I don't care. And if I like what you do, then I'm gonna respond to it in that way. And if I don't like it, then here's my consequence. I'm not gonna take you seriously. Not take you seriously, that comes off a little rude, but I'm not going to take it personally because I know it's not about me. So powerful, you guys. Okay. So here's some more examples. Some of these are weak, some of them are strong. I'm pretty sure you'll be able to figure them out. You can't disrespect me anymore, so you better stop it. You need to stop yelling at me or else I am going to get really mad at you. If you smoke in my house, I'm going to ask you to leave. If you yell at me in front of a patient, I am going to leave the room and I'm going to go down to the break room and I will wait for you there so you can come and we can finish the conversation. But it is inappropriate to have a yelling match in a patient's room. Which one of these are you in control and which one of these is the other person in control? Okay, a couple things to just define things a little bit better. So when do I set a boundary? We set a boundary when there has been a boundary violation. Okay, this is kind of important because sometimes I work with my clients on this and we find a really good boundary like, oh, I can't wait to go in tomorrow and tell everybody what my boundaries are. It's like, wait, hold up a little bit, okay? Okay, so here's an example. If you got a new job and you went into work on your first day and you were meeting people and you got to meet your boss for the first time, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here, it's great. I just wanna let you know I do have a boundary. If you punch me in the face, then I'm gonna call the police on you. Right, what do you think that boss is going to think of you? Now the boundary itself is completely appropriate, right? I think 99.9% of people are going to share that boundary with you, that if someone punches me in the face, I'm gonna run away and I'm gonna call the police on them, right? That is very normal. But if you say it in that context, it's gonna sound kind of maybe threatening, maybe just really, really weird, right? So you'd want to set the boundary in context. When there has been a boundary violation, so you can say, look, here's the situation, just so you know, this is what I do to protect myself when that situation happens. Okay? So that's important. Another little kind of weird thing. So a lot of times, the other pushback I get is probably some of you out there are parents and are like, wait, what do you mean? When you said that, the consequences are always for us, sometimes my consequences are punishments for my children, right? There is a huge difference between setting boundaries with peers and then setting boundaries with children or employees, right? It's a completely different relationship. And in fact, I kind of hesitate to even call that boundaries when you're talking about employees and children because it's sort of a different kind of idea, right? That's where you're trying to teach them or you're trying to hold them to a professional standard, right? And so it's a different situation. So, if you go to your kid, you can say, if you don't eat your broccoli, you don't get any dessert tonight. Or if, your employee, if you don't show up on time, you're gonna get written up. And if you don't show up on time again, you're gonna get fired, right? So suddenly our consequence becomes a punishment. But the confusion is just because sort of the construction of that sentence is similar, but it's not the same thing, right? Because a boundary, remember, is when that person is coming into your house and trying to do something to you that you're not comfortable with, right? But if we're saying, you have to eat your broccoli, that's not a boundary on you, right? That's a kid who doesn't want to eat broccoli, Okay, so it's communication, and but I just mention it because the construction of that kind of phrase can be the same. People confuse them, but it really isn't a boundary, and certainly not a boundary in the context of what we're talking about tonight. Okay, some more inappropriate boundaries. So remember, boundaries are for when people are coming into your house. So I want my boss to give me more praise, and if you don't give me more praise, I'm not going to join your committee. Or I want my coworkers to complain less or work harder, or this is a big one, I want my husband to take out the trash. And if he doesn't take out the trash, then he is not getting any kisses tonight, right? These are not boundaries, right? You are certainly free to make requests to people anytime you want. Like, right? You can ask your boss, please give me some more praise. It makes me feel really good. So I'd love it if you would do it more often. You're free to ask that. Now, of course, as a coach, I'm going to caution you against that, because that is, you're delegating responsibility for your feelings to your boss now, and waiting as soon as he gives you that praise, then you're going to feel bad, right? So as a coach, I don't want you to do that. But you could certainly make the request. You can ask your husband to take out the trash, but if he doesn't take out the trash, it's not because he is infringing on your boundary. It is because taking out the trash is not as important to him at that moment as it was to you, right? So it can take communication, but don't fall into the trap of trying to manipulate him by saying, if you don't do this, then no kisses, right? Because that is pure manipulation. And that might work in the short term, but eventually it's going to lead to him being very resentful to you, because what are you doing when you manipulate him? You are going into his house and you are crossing his fence, and you're trying to get him to do something that he, for whatever reason, does not want to do. Okay? So it's a communication issue. I'm not saying he shouldn't take out the trash. I'm not saying you shouldn't ask him to take out the trash, but it is not a boundary issue. So it is not appropriate to give him a punishment for not doing it. Okay? I just want to be clear about that. It's not trying to make people behave the way you want to. Here's another boundary that I have. This is another one of those neat ones. When people try to manipulate me, I call them out on it, right? Because I can tell what they're doing. And I say, here's my boundary, if you try and manipulate me, I am going to call you out on it, and I'm going to suggest you try an alternative strategy, right? I shut down, because the manipulation is crossing my boundary, so I shut them down. I'm not willing to have that in my life. And if you are relying on manipulation to get other people to do what you want, they can shut you out too just as easy, okay? So just be careful about that. Okay, do not set a boundary in anger. So earlier I did say, right, the appropriate time to set the boundary is when there has been a boundary violation. But if you find yourself angry at the moment that it happens, that is not the right time to then yell at them. You can't do this anymore, and if you ever yell at me again, I'm gonna walk away from you. Right? Because then how do they take that, right? You're now yelling at them. They get defensive. They're not gonna hear you, right? The whole point of all of this that we're doing is that I want you to be set up to get the best possible outcome. And if you set a boundary in anger, you just are increasing your chances you are not going to get the outcome you want. So if you find yourself being angry, do whatever you have to do, walk away, check in, take some deep breaths, use some of the mindfulness techniques, like whatever it takes for you to get over the anger. And then you can say, hey, look, this happened, you yelled at me in front of the patient. I just want to let you know that's not acceptable for me. If you yell at me in front of a patient again, I'm gonna, go to the break room and I'll meet you there and we can finish the conversation there, right? But you need to say it. If you say it like that, you're gonna get a much better chance that you're gonna get what you want. And that's what we want. When this happens, this is how I take care of myself. This is not against you. This is for me. Okay? Maximize your success. And then always follow through with your consequence. So this can be a hard one too, right? Because we set the consequence And then the person does it again, and maybe we don't want to do the consequence. Maybe we don't want to walk out of the room. But if you don't do it, you're just training them that when you tell them a boundary, it doesn't really matter. You have to teach people how to treat you. Right? So going back to the example I had earlier with the young mother, when she was talking to her mother-in-law, you know, and she said, you need to call first. She said, this is the full boundary. And you can imagine this was not super easy for her to say, right? She said, if you don't call first and you just come over, then the front door is going to be locked and I might not be available to open it for you. Right? It sounds kind of scary, but that's what she needed to do to make sure it was clear. Now, if the mother-in-law came over and forgot and came over and knocked on the door, and she went and answered the door and was like, I can't believe you are making me do this. I told you you had to call first and you're just making me be the bad, right? She could get angry and then they could have a fight and then what happens? Nothing good. Or she could not answer the door. And then later when the mother-in-law calls and says, I came over today, I can't believe you didn't let me in. She can say, oh my gosh, I am so sorry about that. I know we talked about this earlier, but you know, sometimes you know, we're taking nap time or we're in the middle of a project and I just can't get up to answer the door. So I agree with you. I hope this never happens again. Please just call first and then I can tell you if it's a good time for you to come over and this will never happen again. Right? Who's in control? And it happens because you have to follow through that consequence and teach people how to treat you. Okay. So, I mean, this is what I want to be really clear about, is that boundaries are rooted in love and respect, right? This isn't about putting up walls and being mean to people and controlling them. This is about providing a means for honest and intimate communication so you can have a better relationship with people. You know, when I work with that guy, he usually ends up being my friend. And it's not that I approve of his work habits at all, right? But I then have the choice because he's going to do what he wants. His behavior, I don't have to feel anything about his behavior because I don't care. I might have to compensate or something like that, but I don't have to feel anything I don't want to feel, right? And so I get to be in control and I get to choose, do I want to have an ally on the unit in him or do I want to make him an enemy? And in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, you could choose differently, but in my opinion, I'd rather have a weak ally than a strong enemy, right? Even if it means he helps me one time where he wouldn't have if he hated me for some reason, or we get to sit around and he tells a joke that makes me laugh, right? I value that. So I would rather, you know, have that tenuous good relationship with them because I can feel that way because I'm the one that's in control rather than I'm letting him control me and having to be angry, and then I have an enemy on the unit, and then it's always miserable every time we're working together, and it's horrible, and it gets worse and it gets worse and it gets worse, and I involve other people and there's gossiping and we're all ganging up on him because, you know, as soon as they fire that guy, they're just going to hire the same guy right back. It'll be a different person, but that guy's always going to be there. Don't give them that power. I cannot give you better advice than that. All right, so I hope you guys have enjoyed this. This is so much information that I kind of crammed in here, but it's good stuff. It's good stuff if you can apply this. Okay, so just a little recap. Number one, we want to take responsibility for your thoughts, feelings, and actions. That is like the number one thing. I cannot stress that more. Do not take responsibility for other people's thoughts, feelings, and actions. And do not assign responsibility for your thoughts, feelings, and actions to other people. If you just do these three things, I guarantee you, perhaps I should not guarantee anything, but for me, this changed my life, okay? Be clear with your boundaries. You're gonna have a request and a consequence. Remember, if you do this, then I am going to do this, take care of myself. We set boundaries only when there has been a boundary violation into our house, into our space, and always follow through with your consequence and train people, teach people how to treat you. Okay, final check-in. Start thinking about those people in your life. How are you going to utilize this information? How are you going to put this into practice in your life? Who are the people that you need to become really clear with yourself about what your boundaries are, and then who are the people that you need to share those with? Okay, so we are on to questions. So I can see there's a couple here. I'm going to read through these. This is the time. If you've got a question that you want me to address, start typing now so that it beats the time difference and gets to me in time. Or if you can think of that person that you want to have a boundary with, type in your boundary and I'll see, and I can give you some feedback on that. So let me see here. As a caretaker for a loved one, it is difficult to watch them make choices that cause more problems. This is a very typical nursing problem, right? Pain symptoms that cause problems. I totally understand. But I will always be the caretaker no matter what, even though poor choices makes my job harder. I can't figure out how to set a boundary about this. How can I not feel frustrated at the consequences of poor choices? This is such a good question. Oh, you know what? Here, let me get off of this ugly slide. Okay, I think I'm back on the screen. So this is an excellent question. And it's a hard one. I don't want to pretend that all of this is super easy and we just like, oh, make this shift and suddenly everything is different, right? It does take some work and it takes some effort, right? Because especially when it's someone that we care about, or it's a patient and we're invested in their outcomes, right? Because it's sort of a reflection of us and how good we are at our jobs. We do care about the outcome, and that's perfectly fine, I think, to care and to really hope for the best for people. But there comes that point where you just have to accept that you don't have that control. You cannot force them into a behavior they don't want to do. You cannot force them into believing something that they don't want to believe. They are their own individual. They are on the journey that they are supposed to have in life, and they get to make whatever choices they want. And it's, I think, our job, especially as, not just as family members and as people who care, but as caregivers, it is our job to always be there and provide the best care that we can, and to let them know we're gonna, help them no matter what. And it's certainly, it does get, like, we want to, be that voice to advocate for them and to educate them where we can. But at the end of the day, it's their choice. Just like you would not want someone coming into your life and saying, oh, you can't eat that hamburger, it's bad for your health, or you can't have that glass of wine because it's bad for your liver, or your soda is too big. It's kind of all that, that nanny kind of stuff. Like, there's a fine line there between who is responsible. And what I would offer is that for you to be in a healthy place, you really have to kind of let go of that. Because what's going to happen if you find yourself getting frustrated and angry and resentful because they're not doing what, you're an educated nurse, you know the right thing for them to do, and they're choosing not to do it. So you get angry and resentful, and then what happens? Are you able to show up in the same way? Are you able to, be the person that you want to be and feel the way that you want to feel? Or are you kind of being a victim? Again, I'm using that word very purposely, a victim, because your feelings now are being dictated to you by their choices. I don't think that's a sustainable place to work from. I think it's difficult. This is always difficult. I mean, I'm a life coach. Like, don't think I know people who I would love to help. I would love to, fix them. I would love to help. And it's the same, as a nurse. You want to do those things, and it's okay to want that, but you really have to have that good boundary to make sure that it's sustainable. You have to protect yourself, and you have to love them enough to let them make their own choices. Educate them, but you have to love them enough to make their own choices. I don't think I can put it any simpler than that. Hope that helps. It's a great question, though. Anyone else have a question? I'll give you a few more minutes if you want to put it in, because I know there's a time lag. So one little thing I wanted to talk about, this is a question that's a little bit not related to this, but I get it frequently from people, and so I thought I would address it, is people ask me, what is the difference between life coaching and therapy? So it's kind of a tricky question to answer because it's very broad, and I'm totally generalizing here, okay? So if you have a different experience, don't get too angry with me, but this is just a broad generalization. It'll be different with different individuals and whatever. But in general, therapy tends to be backwards looking, right? Where they're looking at a hurt that never healed, and they want to help you heal that wound. Okay? Whereas life coaching, generally speaking, tends to be more present and future focused. We take the past, whatever it is, that's what it is. And now from this point forward, how do we find the strategies to move forward in the best possible way? Another way of kind of looking at it is if you're like on a football field and you want to play a really good game of football, you're probably going to talk to a coach. And then if you get tackled and your shoulder gets messed up, then you're going to go get the physical therapist and you're going to say, hey, work on my shoulder and heal this wound. Okay, there's a lot of overlap between what the two people do, but in general, that's kind of the way I like to see it or put it. All right, so I am not seeing any other questions, which I guess just confirms that I am such a good teacher, right? That I answered all of your questions ahead of time. Okay, I'm gonna take that. So thank you guys for coming. This has been super fun for me. I love this kind of stuff. Thank you for being here and participating. If you, I don't know, it's just such good, I hope that the strategies that we've talked about, you can find that way of implementing them in your life and finding the ways that are really going to help you. I think especially as nurses, we love this phrase, I do things like this because this is the way I've always done them, right? And that is fine if that way is serving you. But if you are not getting the results you want from doing it that way, I would really like to offer you that there are different strategies that you can try. There are different things that you can do. And there's a lot of great thought into how our brains work and why we like patterns, why our brain likes to be efficient at things. And so making change can sometimes be challenging. It's hard to break habits, but it can be done. And sometimes those habits are really holding us back in ways we are not at all even aware of. And once you start looking at it and doing this work, it can be really eye-opening and really lead to some great results. So if you guys are interested in getting a little bit more specific about your situation and your life and what's going on with you, I would encourage you to schedule a free one-on-one, I call it a self-care checkup with me, and we can just talk. It's a 60-minute one-on-one phone call, and we just talk about really what's going on with you, things you've been trying, what you're not getting, what's in your way, and I see if I can find something that is going to help address some of those things that are missing, so that you can have the results that you want to see in your life. And if that goes well, then we can talk about what it would look like for us to work together going into the future, and how I might be able to support you in having the life that you want. Because let me tell you guys, nurses are awesome. You deserve to have everything you want. You deserve to have that life that you want. We do not have to be miserable. We do not have to be martyrs. Too many of us go down that road like it's the only way possible. And it's not. It's a choice, and you do not have to make that choice. And if I can support you in that, I would love to. So below the video here, see if I can do this, down below, there's a little button that says self-care checkup. Once this is done, you can click on that. It'll take you to another page where my calendar is. I've opened up a bunch of slots through this weekend over the next couple days that I don't usually have, but I wanted to make sure I had lots of slots available for you guys in case you wanted to schedule something. I know nurses work 24 hours a day, so I wanted to be a lot of them so you'd have an option. So click on one of those and schedule an appointment, and let's talk. I think it'll be awesome. Going forward, you can always find me on my website, robbhillmancoaching.com. You can find me on my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/robbhillmancoaching. And hopefully we can keep the conversation going. I love hearing from you guys. I probably will do some more of these seminars coming up. I've got a couple of good ideas, so I'm excited for the future. Thank you again for coming. I really appreciate it, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.